The novel Bitter Wormwood is written by Northeast Indian novelist and poet Easterayan Keer. Through this novel, the writer has tried to delineate the incessant freedom struggle of Naga people and its repercussions faced by Naga society and youth. Besides, through various characters and incidents of the fiction, the novelist has left no stone unturned to depict the inexplicable agony and suffering of innocent souls in the name of Naga freedom movement. In addition, through this book, Keer brings forward the struggles of the Naga freedom movement, the atrocities committed by both the Indian soldiers and the Naga underground. Never truly divulging into the graphic scenes but rather passing a commentary through the dialogue of Mose and Meteor, two former Naga underground members. The word, wormwood, means the herb, bitter wormwood, was traditionally believed to keep bad spirits away. For the Nagas, facing violent struggle all around, it becomes a powerful talisman. Easterayan Keer is a poet and author who currently lives in northern Norway. The majority of her writings are based in the lived realities of the people in Nagaland in northeast India. Her motivation to write is summed up in this statement by her in an interview: "I felt we needed to create written Naga literature. We have so much oral narratives, but with oral dying out, it's all going to be lost." Apart from writing, she also performs jazz poetry with her band Jazz Poesy. Before further discussion, we must know about Naga nationalism. Naga nationalism is an ideology that supports the self-determination of the Naga people in India, mainly in Nagaland and neighboring regions, and Myanmar, and the furtherance of Naga culture. So many Naga groups share a common belief of their ethnogenesis as a distinct people. These groups include Angami, Sema, Rengma, Lotha, Zim, Liangme and Rongme. According to this belief, the ancestors of the Nagas lived in harmony together at a place called Makhel, identified with the present-day Mao village of Makhel in Manipur, and, alternatively, believed to be near the Chingwin River in present-day Myanmar. As their population grew, they decided to split and spread outside Makhel. According to the Herika faith, the Naga peoples took an oath pledging that they would come together again and live as a kingdom. However, when the British arrived in India, the various Naga tribes had no common national identity. The term, Naga, was a vaguely defined exonym, which referred to the different tribes in present-day Nagaland and its surrounding area. The different tribes spoke mutually unintelligible languages and had distinct cultures, but they are inextricably interrelated. Each Naga village was a sovereign state ruled by tribal elders. Internecine feuds, wars and headhunting campaigns were common among the Naga tribes. The British captured several Naga territories and consolidated them under the Naga Hills district of Assam. During the British rule, missionaries such as Miles Bronson and Edwin W. Clark introduced Christianity to the area, greatly changing the social and political fabric of the local society. The common Christian identity led to peace and unity among the various Naga tribes. Naganese developed as a link language for inter-tribe communication. During the Kuki Revolt 1917-19 and the World War I 1914-18, the British government recruited a number of laborers and potters from the Naga tribes. As part of the labor corps, around 2,000 Nagas were sent to France, where, alienated from the other British Indian troops, they developed a sense of unity. They agreed that after returning to their homeland, they will work towards unity and friendship among the various Naga tribes. These Nagas, together with the British officials, formed the Naga Club in 1918. It was led by Gamburas, Dobashas, teachers, government servants, pastors and educated people in addition to the Naga Labour Corps personnel. It had two branches, one at Kohama and the other at Mokokchung. This club provided the socio-political foundation for the Naga nationalist movement. In 1929, the club submitted a memorandum to the Simon Commission, requesting that the Nagas should be given a choice of self-determination after the British departure from India. Heraka was a religious movement led by Haipo Jadonang and his successor Rani Gadanlu, who sought to establish the legendary kingdom of the Naga people during 1929-33. The two aimed at creating a feeling of religious nationalism among the Nagas, mainly the Zeliangrong tribes Zim, Liangme and Rongme including in Peekabui. They launched an independence struggle against the British, and sought to establish intertribal solidarity and unity. However, the movement was not widespread outside of the three Zeliangrong tribes due to its antagonistic attitude towards Christian converts and the Kukis. The movement also developed into a political uprising against the British, which prompted the government to clamp down on it. In 1945, C.R. Pozzi, the Deputy Commissioner of the Naga Hills District, established the Naga Hills District Tribal Council as a forum of the various Naga groups. This body replaced the Naga Club, and a year later, developed into a political organization called the Naga National Council (NNC). The NNC initially demanded autonomy within the Indian Union and a separate electorate. However, later, under the leadership of Ngami Zapu Faizo, it adopted a secessionist outlook and campaigned for the creation for a sovereign Naga state. The NNC declined as differences developed between Faizo and other leaders, and Faizo got the NNC secretary T. Sakri murdered in January 1956. After a series of armed conflicts and peace missions, the Government of India agreed to create the Naga Hills Tunsang Area (NHTA), a union territory with a large degree of autonomy. After further protests, violence and diplomatic discussions, the government recognized Nagaland as a full-fledged state within the Union of India. Since then, the Naga nationalism has coexisted with Indian nationalism. Nagaland recorded more than 87% voter turnout in 2014 Indian general election, which was highest voters turnout in India, which Indian authorities consider as faith of Naga people in democracy of India. About the novel. In a gripping story that brings to life the processes that propel social change and transform communities, Easteranki skillfully renders the small incidents of Moses' childhood, his family, and the routines and rituals of traditional village life, painting an evocative picture of a peaceful way of life, now long vanished. The coming of radio into Moses' family house marks the beginning of the changes that will connect them to the wider world. They learn of partition, independence, a land called America. Mose and his friends become involved in the Naga struggle for independence, and are caught in a maelstrom of violence that ends up ripping communities apart. The book opens with the murder of a young man in the market of Kohama in the year 2007, with the protagonist being present at the scene. The young man has just been gunned down in cold blood, the latest casualty in the conflict that has brutalized the people of Nagaland, in the neglected northeastern corner of India. Rich in culture and history, Bitter Wormwood traces the story of one man's life from 1937 until 2007, offering poignant insight into the human cost behind the political headlines of one of India's most beautiful regions. The ground. The dead man was no longer twitching. Blood-red tomatoes lay crushed under his feet, and vegetables dropped by frightened shoppers were strewn on the ground near him. Sand clung to his mouth, from which a small trickle of blood had begun to flow. The blood spill from his chest was steadily spreading on the ground. He was very young. He looked barely 20. In death, it was difficult to tell which tribe he belonged to. Short-cropped hair, smart clothes and expensive shoes. Mose noted all these facts quickly, before the police came and unceremoniously dumped the body into a van and rushed it to the morgue. The standard routine was to take the victims of shootings to the emergency unit of the hospital. But it was obvious that there was nothing that could be done for the young man. Once the van had driven off and a police cordon established round the area, Moose turned towards home. He was still clutching the plastic bag in which he had been carrying the chilies and brinjals he had bought just before the shooting. Kohama is the backdrop of Easterine Care's Bitter Wormwood. It traces the life of Moseley from his birth in 1937, 2 years after the Simon Commission accorded special status for the Naga areas, to being shot by thugs 70 years later. Moseley's traditional and peaceful village life is rocked when his mother buys a radio for him. As the villagers learn new words such as partition and independence, Moseley and his friends get sucked into the Naga struggle for independence, a maelstrom of violence ripping Naga society apart. The Propski users seem to suggest that Moseley belongs to the Angami tribe. But his could have been the story of any Naga caught in a seemingly never-ending conflict situation, who was born to be a warrior and tackle challenges head-on. His grandmother underscores this Naga trait when comforting his mother after the death of his father: "If life is hard to you, you simply harden yourself so its griefs are easier to bear." The Indian government used its army to suppress the Naga struggle for freedom. Bitter Wormwood records the brutal torture inflicted by the Indian army upon Naga villagers. Keir expresses her own experience of surveillance and suppression of the army in an interview. From 2000 early 2005, I personally experienced the stress of living in a house that was stalked by armed. The brutality of life in Nagaland, especially the brutalization of many young men, made me fear for the safety of my children. My older daughter was traumatized on a short trip when their car was stopped and they were held for questioning by a group holding them at gunpoint. Her sister came within 5 meters of being shot when armed men began to indiscriminately fire at the human target, felling an innocent citizen. Daftwa, Swati, 3. The Nagas suffered a great deal at the hands of the Indian army in the forms of killings of civilians, torture of innocent young men, custodial deaths, rapes of many girls and women, burning of villages etc. There are references to killing of innocent people, burning several Aur and Sema villages and raping women in the novel. 3 members of the Naga National Council had been killed and their bodies displayed publicly in the town by the army. Moose's grandmother was a victim of the brutality of the Indian army. The army ransacked people's houses for suspicious documents and tortured them. An instance of brutal beating of the civilians can be cited from the novel as 4 men being beaten by the army. The men covered their bleeding heads with their hands, but the soldiers continued to rain down blows at them. 1 man lay unconscious on the ground, but the soldiers did not stop kicking him in the head. 79. The sad part of it was the torture of innocent common people who were not in any ways connected to the undergrounds. Villages were grouped together and starved to death, and villages were burnt to cut off hay. Lifeline of the undergrounds. There was a strong feeling of hatred for the army and police Aminthe Naga villagers. Rough, lathi-wielding police who didn't hesitate to strike down hard at anybody who looked like they might disturb the law and order. The CRPF had become a deeply hated presence because of the terror tactics they used against the public. Young men, inebriated or not, were regularly picked up by them and beaten until half dead. The hatred grew and simmered. 1-8. The army was given special powers through the AFSPA Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The soldiers got the license to shoot anyone without any trial if they suspect him or her of being harmful. They got protection from being charged by a court of law. According to Netio, AFSPA is nothing but just an excuse for the army to kill us the Naga people. Some young Nagas who couldn't tolerate the torture by army and CRPF attacked them and sometimes managed to kill them. But this used to prove even worse for the common people since the army or police tortured and killed many in the reply. A visitor to Mo's shop tells him, "Some of my son's friends got so fed up of them, the way they are so arrogant and keep beating up people on any excuse." One of them used lead pellets in a slingshot which proved quite deadly. It hit a CRPF man out on patrol. Right through his temple. The man died. Since then, they have been on the rampage, looking for any excuse to pick on the locals and beat them senseless. 1 to 8 common people are caught between the undergrounds and the army. There is no relief to them. They are either tortured by the army or by the factions of the underground. People were tired of the killings resulting out of the clashes between the factions. News affirms that everyone is sick of it, all these killings. But no one has the guts to do anything about it. 9. Credit. Praveen Thorat, Bitter Wormwood, A Tale of Struggle and Sufferings of the Naga People. Literary Journal. Hindustan Times. Internet websites.